What's up, guys? It's your boy Jalen back at it again with another video, and this video is going to be a very unorthodox video. It's going to be something that is very different from what I usually post on this channel, but honestly it comprises a lot of what I'd be doing a lot of times. Most of the times I just be reading stuff like this, stuff from other different areas and things of that nature. But I think this text is especially relevant according to the times that we live in, of course, but also I think this text might relate to times in the past as well. Now, the reason why I'm using the word times is sort of, kind of a hint at what this text is really getting at. There's parts of this text that are prophetic. This is coming from the Nag Hammadi Library, which is famous for having a lot of the Gnostic scriptures in it, but it also has some scriptures from the Hermetic texts. And this text is Asclepius 21 to 29. Like, if you have the I actually have like a paperback of the Nag Hammadi library, and in the paperback is called Excerpt from the Perfect Discourse, but it's the same thing. And like I said, this text has prophecy in it that I think will be quite interesting, but we'll just get right into it. So I'm gonna read the entire thing, so hold your horses, buckle your seatbelts, grab some popcorn, and enjoy the monotony of my voice as I go over these words. I'm going to be adding some interpretations, I'm going to be adding some explanations in. So here we go. So starting from the first line. And if you, Asclepius, so this is Hermes, of course, talking to Asclepius about this stuff. Like, a lot of times with the Hermetic texts, Hermes will be talking to three people. Like, he'll talk to Asclepius, he'll talk to Tot, and then he'll talk to Ammon, which are like his three disciples. And of course this is like all mythology basically, but it's mythology, it's a compilation of essentially, it's a compilation of many sources of thought. Like, we have Christians in here, putting their thoughts in. We have, of course, Hermeticism. We've got, like, some Hindu stuff, like all Eastern thought, Greek thought, Roman thought. It's all being brought into, essentially like a small amount of texts. And it's being read and written down in a way to where it can be understood in a concise way. But that's the context here. So it's Hermes talking to Asclepius. So Hermes says, and if you wish to see the reality of this mystery, then you should see the wonderful representation of the intercourse that takes place between the male and the female. For when the semen reaches the climax, it leaps forth. In that moment, the female receives the strength of the male. The male, for his part, receives the strength of the female while the semen does this. So, that's, of course, that's sex. And, he's more so talking about the sacred component of sex there. That's a no-brainer. Therefore, the mystery of intercourse is performed in secret, in order that the two sexes might not disgrace themselves in front of many who do not experience that reality. For each of them contributes its own part in begetting. For if it happens in the presence of those who do not understand the reality, it is laughable and unbelievable, and moreover, they are holy mysteries of both words and deeds, because not only are they not heard, but also they are not seen. Therefore, such people, the unbelievers, are blasphemers. They are atheistic and impious. but the others are not many. Rather, the pious who are counted are few. Therefore, wickedness remains among the many, since learning concerning the things which are ordained does not exist among them. For the knowledge of the things which are ordained is truly the healing of the passions of the matter. Therefore, learning is something derived from knowledge. So, this second paragraph is, kind of self-explanatory. The people that believe that there's just nothing to life, that there's just nothing out there, that, it all just comes out of nothing, and that there's, that there's, we're just here, they're kind of dumb. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. While those that are actively trying to figure, this world out, because, this world exists for a reason. This world is, it didn't just arrive out of nowhere. The people that are actually trying to have a drive towards learning, these are the people that are actually going to gain knowledge. Now, when we're talking about sex here, why are these people talking about sex so much if they're spiritual? Well, what a lot of people when people talk about Gnosticism, what people don't talk about is that the Gnostics had a tradition that was built around sex. There's a book, I'm looking at it right now, called Gnostic Mysteries of Sex. And essentially that book literally talks about the fact that they had a sexual tradition where, they had sex in a way that represented what was going on. They practiced sex magic in a way that mirrored the cosmos. So it was like sexual theurgy that they were practicing, where they were mixing all of these different sexual fluids, and they were doing all this in a way to where they were doing all this in a way to commune and have an orgasm experience that brought them to the divine, while also of course not having kids, because again they're Gnostics. But they had a sexual tradition in these spaces, and I don't, you don't hear that whenever people talk about Gnosticism. All you really hear is the demiurge and this and that, but you don't really hear that they actually did, like, certain sects did have practices. And the Gnostic mysteries of sex also allude to, there might have been some Indian migrations to, these locations where the Gnostic mysteries were being shared, which would make a whole lot of sense with like Tantra and all that. And also why, semen is so prized, the sexual energy is so prized, because these, semen, the sexual energy, this all, is heavily related to the Kundalini, which is, the energy within the human being that, when cultivated, allows for them to have that, orgasm experience with the divine without, the need of, sex and procreating. The orgasm happens in the third eye. It doesn't necessarily happen by, spilling your seed. So that's why you have a whole lot of different, sex talk in the Gnostics. And, again, this sex talk is about having an experience that mirrors the experience with God. And that's why, you don't really do it in public. If you do it in public, then all people are going to see is, some dude, ramming, his bull into, another woman's oven. They're not really going to all they're going to see is, a dude hammering away at some broad. They're not really going to understand what's going on internally and what myth is being played out. They're just going to see the sexual part of it. And, by only seeing the physical sexual part of it, they miss the important parts of it that are so deeply embedded in the Gnostic philosophy. So that's why there's the sex talk in the first and the second paragraph. The third paragraph, of course, it's about the fact that there's something out there. We need to be learning about it. We need to be gaining knowledge about it. Anyways, let's keep going. But if there is ignorance and learning does not exist in the soul of man, then the incurable passions persist in it, and additional evil comes with them in the form of an incurable sore. And the sore constantly gnaws at the soul, and through it the soul produces worms from the evil and stinks. But God is not the cause of these things, since he sent to men knowledge and learning. So that's kind of what, this is kind of similar to what I was talking about with Kierkegaard. Like Kierkegaard talks about like sin, which is essentially like, we know what we're supposed to be doing down here, and every time we don't do it, we're just bringing further suffering towards ourselves. So we may as well just go ahead and do it. This is sort of like a similar attitude. Like, we know that we should be learning something about our souls, something about our nature, and every time that we don't understand and uncover our nature, we just bring further suffering to ourselves. And that's not even really, we don't really have to bring this towards Gnosticism and all that sorts of shit. We can just stick to the psychological everyday understanding of what was just said. If we are not acting in who we are, then it's just, we're just creating a hell for ourselves. So that's this passage right here is very relatable. Trismegistus, did he send them to men alone? Yes, Asclepius, he sent them to them alone, and it is fitting that we tell you why to men alone. He granted knowledge and learning, the allotment of his good. And now listen, God and the Father, even the Lord, created man subsequent to the gods, and he took him from the region of matter. Since matter is involved in the creation of man, a whole lot of words are missing, of course. The passions are in it. Therefore, they continually flow over his body, for this living creature would not have existed in any other way, except that he had taken this food, since he is mortal. It is also inevitable that inopportune desires which are harmful dwell in him. For the gods, since they came into being out of a pure matter, do not need learning and knowledge. For the immortality of the gods is learning and knowledge, since they came into being out of pure matter. It assumed for them the position of knowledge and learning. By necessity, he set a boundary for man. He placed him in learning and knowledge. So, us as men, we have bodies, we have needs, we have to eat things. And due to the nature of this, all of that comes with passions that, can limit our ability to gain knowledge. And since, the gods don't really have bodies, they have more so a more purer form of matter, they don't really have to deal with this. Like, they're just, like, all they are is just manifestations of learning and knowledge, which, can this sort of sounds a lot like Plato, where, in Platonism, the gods are living in the world of ideas, right? They're living in this world of ideas outside the cave, while, us as humans, we are inside the cave. With these mortal bodies, right? These mortal tombs that are housing our souls. So, very Platonic. Concerning these things, learning and knowledge, which we have mentioned from the beginning, he perfected them in order that by means of these things, he might restrain passions and evils according to his will. He brought man's mortal existence into immortality. He became good and mortal, just as I have said, for he created a twofold nature for him, the immortal and the mortal. And it happened this way because of the will of God, that men be better than the gods, since indeed the gods are immortal, but men alone are both immortal and mortal. Therefore man has become akin to the gods, and they know the affairs of each other with certainty. The gods know the things of men, and men know the things of the gods. And I am speaking about men, Asclepius, who have attained learning and knowledge. But those who are more vain than these, it is not fitting that we say anything base, since we are divine and introducing holy matters. So, those that are learning and gaining knowledge, This is what's applicable. This is what's applicable to them. Like, we're pretty much describing these people. Now, of course, when we're talking about God here, right, when we're talking about the Lord, this is not no religious talk that we're dealing with here, because, like, these people were not religious. They were all about what is the actual nature of reality. And for them, the actual nature of reality is, well, everything comes from a source. So creation itself has to come from a source. So, this source has to be God. And if this source is God, then, us as, the effect of this cause, we need to be trying to figure out what the frick this cause is, right? So that's all they're really saying when it comes down to the these Hermetic dialogues. And those that, have this line of thinking, like, these are the people that are of concern for Hermes here. And those that really aren't, having that line of thinking, he essentially says, like, they're not really of the divine. Like, but people that are learning and gaining knowledge and are, pursuing it, they are of the divine. They have a divine, they have the mortal and the immortal, right? They're guided by these daemons that lead towards the gods, and them using their free will to do this sort of reveals a nature to them that, like it says, makes them better than the gods, right? Because, not only are they, led towards God in the sense of their immortality, but also their mortality. They're led towards God despite their passions, but they're also led towards God because, not only are they comprised of these passions, but they're also comprised of, soul regardless. Since we have entered the matter of the communion between the gods and men, know, Asclepius, that in which man can be strong. For just as the Father, the Lord of the universe, creates gods, in this very way man too, this mortal earthly living creature, the one who is not like God, also himself creates gods. Not only does he strengthen, but he is also strengthened. Not only is he God, but he also creates gods. Are you astonished, Asclepius? Are you yourself another disbeliever like the many? Trismegistus, I agree with the words spoken to me, and I believe you as you speak, but I have also been astonished at the discourse about this, and I have decided that man is blessed since he has enjoyed this great power. Now, what is he talking about when he says, man can create gods and all these other sorts of stuff? Well, us as men, let's just think about it this way, right? I've talked about chaos magic on this channel, and that's simply what this is in like the most easiest way I can explain it. Us as men, since we have an immortal element to ourselves, we're always going to be connected to the Platonic realm of ideas. And by being connected to the Platonic realm of ideas, we can sort of draw from that realm. We can draw from, that realm of, creativity, intuition, and inspiration. And we can sort of make vessels down here in order to house that. And essentially, that's all that a god is, right? So, if I have like an inspiration that, I want some form of war down here, then I can create a god of war. I can make an idol and place that essence into that idol, and there you go, you have a freaking god. For chaos magic, right? If I want, some energy for my life, some conscious energy for my life, I can make a servitor and do it down there, and do it down here. And that's all because I have mind. I have that thing that makes ideas in the first place. So that's all that he's really talking about when he says creating gods. He's going to talk about creating idols later on. And that which is greater than all these things, Asclepius, is worthy of admiration. Now it is clear to us concerning the race of the gods, and we confess it along with everyone else, that the race of the gods, has come into being out of a pure matter, and their bodies are heads only. But that which men create is the likeness of the gods. They, the gods, are from the farthest part of the matter, and the object created by men, is from the outer part of the being of men. Not only are they what men created, heads, but they are also the other members of the body, and according to their likeness. Just as God has willed that the inner man be created according to his image, in the very same way man on earth creates gods according to his likeness. So like what was said, gods are comprised of heads only. What does that mean? Gods are comprised of mind. Gods are comprised of ideas. Gods are comprised of the energies that are contained in the mind, right? Just like I said previously, inspiration, intuition, ideas, equations, letters, numbers, all these things are gods. It's not until we create these idols that, these gods miraculously gain like other body parts. And of course, like these other body parts are in the form of what? Not freaking, technically, like we do create, gods in other forms. But most of the times, gods are going to be human beings. They're going to be created in what? Our likeness. So, that's simple enough. Trismegistus, you are not talking about idols, are you? Asclepius, you yourself are talking about idols. You see that again, you yourself, Asclepius, are also a disbeliever of the Discourse. You say about those who have soul and breath that they are idols. Those who bring about these great events, you are saying about these who give prophecies that they are idols. These who give men sickness and healing, that yada yada yada, them. So, like these idols that are doing all these things. Or are you ignorant, Asclepius, that Egypt is the image of heaven? Moreover, it is the dwelling place of heaven and all the forces that are in heaven. If it is proper for us to speak the truth, our land is the temple of the world. And it is proper for you not to be ignorant that a time will come in it, our land, when Egyptians will seem to have served the divinity in vain, and all their activity and their religion will be despised. For all divinity will leave Egypt and will flee upward to heaven, and Egypt will be widowed. It will be abandoned by the gods. For foreigners will come into Egypt, and they will rule it, Egypt. Moreover, Egyptians will be prohibited from worshiping God. Furthermore, they will come into the ultimate punishment, especially whoever among them is found worshiping and honoring God. And in that day, the country that was more pious than all countries will become impious. No longer will it be full of temples, but it will be full of tombs. Neither it be full of gods, but it will be full of corpses. Egypt will become like the fables, and your religious objects will be, words cut out. The marvelous things and words cut off. And if your words are stones and are wonderful, and the barbarian will be better than you, Egyptian, in his religion, whether he is the Scavian or the Hindus or some other of this sort. So this is where the prophecy comes in, right? So I think it will be a lot better if I just read the whole prophecy and just go back. So that's what I'm going to do. And what is this that I say about the Egyptian? For they, the Egyptians, will not abandon Egypt. For in a time when the gods have abandoned the land of Egypt and have fled upward to heaven, then all Egyptians will die, and Egypt will be made a desert by the gods and the Egyptians. And as for you, river, there will be a day when you will flow with blood more than water, and dead bodies will be stacked higher than the dams. And he who is dead, sorry y'all, freaking southern accent, and he who is dead will not be mourned as much as he who is alive. Indeed, the latter will be known as an Egyptian on account of his language in the second period of time. Asclepius, why are you weeping? He will seem like a foreigner in regard to his customs. Divine Egypt will suffer evils greater than these. Egypt, lover of God and the dwelling place of the gods. school of religion will become an example of impiousness. And in that day, the world will not be marveled at, and immortality, nor will it be worshipped, since we say that it is not good. It has become neither a single thing nor a vision, but it is in danger of becoming a burden to all men. Therefore it will be despised, the beautiful world of God, the incomparable work, the energy that possesses goodness, the man-formed vision. Darkness will be preferred to light, and death will be preferred to life. No one will gaze into heaven, and the pious man will be counted as insane, and the impious man will be honored as wise. The man who is afraid will be considered strong, and the good man will be punished like a criminal. Okay, so let's go back. So, yada yada yada. So this is essentially talking about the fact that, Egypt is a place of spiritual power, and there will come a time when all the spiritual power that is within Egypt will go away, and Egypt will become no more. Now I know what you guys are thinking, bro. They're talking about foreigners coming into Egypt and ruling it, but it's fucking Egypt. That's their history. That's all it is. All Egypt's history is foreigners going into it and ruling it, right? You got Akhenaten. What was Akhenaten? Akhenaten was a freaking Cushite. He came in and ruled it. Who were the shepherd kings? They were like Middle Easterners. They came in, ruled it. You had the Greeks. They came in, ruled it. You had the Hebrews. They came in, ruled it. I mean, you've had foreigners come in all the time and ruled it. So what's the difference here? Well, the difference here is that whatever act happens at this point, with whatever foreign power comes into Egypt at this point, whenever they come in, Egypt won't really go back to being a spiritual power. Because you got to think about it, right? When all of these people come into Egypt and they rule it, because look here, right? It says, furthermore, they will come into the ultimate punishment, especially whoever among them is found worshiping and honoring God. All of these people that came into Egypt, all these foreigners, they worshiped God. As much as you don't want to admit it, they did, right? I mean, the Greeks, they came in, and of course, they were questionable. I mean, my dude Ptolemy literally made a cult dedicated to himself. Serapis, which is a whole nother rabbit hole, which, man, Serapis Christus. But anyways, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Then you got the Hebrews, which we know worshiped God. Akhenaten worshipped the one God. Who else did I say? I said the Cushites. I said the shepherd kings. The Greeks. Hebrews worshipped one God. The Romans. The Romans were spiritual pragmatists, which essentially meant that if a spiritual power worked out in their favor, then they would give resources and worship to it. But they just, it's still technically very closely akin to theurgy and thaumaturgy. So one could say, yes, they worship God. So all these people, I just took a swig of coffee. All of these people are religious people. But the people that are going to come in now are not religious people. Okay, they're not religious people. And whoever these people are, when they come in, they're going to start killing crap. They're going to start killing crap. And not only will they start killing crap, there's not going to be no temples left. There's not going to be no relics left. And the people that are left and that do have some spiritual integrity to them, they're not going to be Egyptian. Like it says, you're going to be seeing people that are very spiritually apt, but it's going to be like Scavians and Hindus and people of other ethnicities. Like the actual Egyptians themselves aren't going to be spiritual anymore. Okay. And when we get down here, it says, even though like the Egyptians aren't really going to be spiritual anymore, they're not going to abandon Egypt. These people are still in Egypt. It's just that they're getting killed off. It says, and dead bodies will be stacked higher than the dams, and he who is dead will not be mourned as much as he who is alive. Indeed, the latter will be known as an Egyptian on account of his language in the second period of time. So, in this period of time, it says, pretty much the people that are alive are going to be screwed more than the people that are dead. You're going to literally want to be dead. That's how bad things are going to be. And also, in order to really know like an Egyptian that's dead, you're going to have to like account for their, you're going to have to account for the language. Because again, like it says, like the Egyptians that are alive aren't practicing their culture anymore, so you don't necessarily know if they're Egyptian or not. Because they're not worshiping God, they're not doing anything of that sort. In that day, the world will not be marveled at, and immortality, nor will it be worshipped. So again, it's an atheistic world. And I have a theory that I'm going to pose. I'm going to pose it at the end, but I'm going to wrap this up before I pose it. We're going to continue on with the interpretation. And concerning, let me see where I'm at. I'm right here. So darkness will be preferred to light, and death will be preferred to life. No one will gaze into heaven, and the pious man will be counted as insane, and the impious man will be honored as wise. The man who is afraid will be considered as strong, and the good man will be punished like a criminal. And concerning the soul and the things of the soul and the things of immortality, along with the rest of what I have said to you, taught Asclepius and Ammon, the disciples that I talked to you guys about, not only will they be considered ridiculous, but they will also be thought of as vanity. But believe me when I say that people of this kind will be endangered by the ultimate danger to their soul, and a new law will be established. They will That's crazy that those lines are missing. I ain't gonna lie. Like the other lines are just words, but it's, anyways. The wicked angels will remain among men, and be with them, and lead them into wicked things recklessly, as well as into atheism, wars, and plunderings, by teaching them things contrary to nature. Now, with angels, what we got to understand is gods, angels, demons, they're all the same thing, right? They're all, well, they're not necessarily all the same thing, but they're all hinting at something similar. And the reason why I just corrected myself there is because angels, like the small angels, not the archangels, because the archangels, if we're looking at like the Kabbalistic system with like the different worlds, archangels would be gods, angels would be like demons. So when it's saying this, it's saying that, okay, so you have these wicked angels, we have these demons, and when we are talking about demons, like with Platonism, the reason why I keep talking about Platonism is because the Gnostics, the Hermeticists, they were all heavily inspired by Plato. I mean, when you read like how the cosmogony is set up, and the philosophy behind like a lot of this different stuff, I mean, it's Plato. I mean, like you have a world of illusions and a world of truth. Like all it is the cave. Like you hear Plato like all throughout this. But when it's talking about wicked angels, we have to go back to demons. What are demons? Demons are powers that allow for mankind to interact with gods. So for you to be drawn to a particular god, there had to be a demonic attraction to it. There had to be some daemon drawing you to it. So what it's talking about here is, there's going to be powers at play, and there's going to be forces at play that make it to where people are just naturally drawn to like atheism, wars, plunderings, and all that sorts of stuff. So it's talking about the fact that, okay, these daemons, these wicked daemons are going to exist. And, it says that it's going to remain among men. So remain means that they were already there, right? So at the beginning of this discourse, Hermes said that, atheism was still there among men. It's just that, now, once this prophecy hits, atheism is going to be the norm, right? Make of that what you will. And when we look at the world right now, atheism will be the norm, right? Let's be honest, right? I'm gonna be blunt. I'm gonna piss a lot of people off by saying this, but let's look at it here, okay? The world is at war. We are finna hit World War III. Who are the people that are finna put us into a world war that we do not care about? Okay, now a lot of y'all may argue, well, it's families, it's government, it's not this. Well, okay, what is the ideology that is giving these groups power in order to enact this war in the first place? Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Those three. So if I was living in this age, or even after this age, right, after everything that happened, and I looked at this, what would be my next conclusion? My next conclusion would be, okay, so these three guys nearly got us all wiped out as humanity. How about we get rid of these guys? How about we get rid of these Christians, these Muslims, these Jews that almost got us all wiped off the planet, or at least the ideas that inspired them to almost get us knocked off this planet, right? And replace it with atheism, right? But the thing is, though, you don't necessarily have to replace it with atheism. You just have to understand that these religions, these orthodox religions, aren't necessarily the truth. Like I said, I'm pissing a lot of people off, but that's just my opinion of what's going to happen. Like, I don't, like, with how the mainstream religious communities are acting at this point in time, I don't see how one could argue the fact that they're doing good. Like, I don't. It's just my opinion. I think that the logical conclusion would either be to have a spiritual perspective or an atheist perspective. Would either be to say, okay, we need to reevaluate what spiritual thought is, or we need to not have it at all. And of course, like with the Hermeticists, they would go for the former. But the Hermeticists are also saying that there's going to be people that go for the latter. And when you go for the latter, then essentially you have a world where all bets are off. You have a world where you essentially are able to say, well, I can do whatever the frick I want. If the world is just dead matter, if the world is just blunt, inanimate matter, then nothing matters. You can do whatever the hell you want to a person, and there's no consequences. Because what is there? What's gonna sort of attack you back? Nothing. There's nothing out there. So he's saying that there's going to be the latter as well. There's going to be the former, and there's going to be the latter. Anyways, let's continue on. In those days, the earth will not be stable, and men will not sail the sea, nor will they know the stars in heaven. Every sacred voice of the word of God will be silenced, and the air will be diseased, such as the senility of the world, atheism, dishonor, and the disregard of noble words. Okay. How many of us have a stable enough income right now? Have a stable enough job right now to where we can vacation? Okay, so there's that part down. Y'all saw Yellowstone, right? Y'all saw Yellowstone. Y'all saw the earthquakes in Japan, all that stuff. Okay, that's That's the earth will not be stable down pack. So how many of us know about astrology? Okay, you guys don't believe in astrology. That's okay. Astronomy, at least, right? How many of us believe that the moon is bigger than the earth? Quite a few. Okay, so that's the stars down pack. So you can sort of see that this prophecy, it's getting at some, it's hinting at something that might be happening in real time. Not gonna lie. And when these things had happened, Asclepius, then the Lord, the Father, and God from the only first God, the Creator, when he looked upon the things that happened, established his design, which is good, against the disorder. He took away error and cut off evil. Sometimes he submerged it in the great flood, and at other times he burned it in a searing fire, and at still other times he crushed it in wars and plagues until he brought of the work. And this is the birth of the world. So, you had the great flood, burnt in a stirring fire. You got Sodom and Gomorrah there. Wars and plagues. We already know about plagues and crap. But with wars, you got like the heroic age where people just fought one another. But, after all of these ages, the world went back into a homeostasis. So that's understandable. The restoration of the nature of the pious ones who are good will take place in a period of time that never had a beginning. For the will of God has no beginning, even as his nature, which is his will, it has no beginning. For the nature of God is will, and his will is the good. Trismegistus is purpose, then the same as will. Yes, Asclepius. Hold on. Let me wait on this. Let me go back to this, because this is. We're going to take, I'm not going to say like we'll take a recess, but I'm going to just wrap this part up real fast. So when he's saying like, about the pious ones and all that, you can also sort of have this idea in like the Gospel of Judas and really just the Gnostics in general. Of course, this is a Hermetic text. I'm just saying that the Gnostics had a similar idea with like the holy generation. Like there's a generation of mankind that has its origins in like the immortal world. Like with the Gnostics, it would be the Pleroma. They exist in this holy generation of like the heavenly Seth, and they're just set apart from the other generations. So that idea existed in these circles. So I'm going to just add that there so we can sort of cut that off and move on to this next part. Trismegistus is purpose, then, the same as will. Yes, Asclepius, since will is included in counsel, for he, God, does not will what he has from deficiency. Since he is complete in every part, he wills what he already fully has. And he has every good, and what he wills, and he has the good that he wills. Therefore, he has everything, and God wills what he wills. And the good world is an image of the good one. So the world is a good place, And even if you have like Kabbalistic, like in the Kabbalistic worldview, you have like the shells, you have the Kulipov. The Kulipov is sort of cut off from everything else. We can go into Kulipovic energies and all that other sorts of stuff. I think even though the Kulipov represents like a more so dark nature of God, it still represents a nature of God that is enlightening to know in a certain framework. But I don't think it's a I don't think the Kulipov is something that everybody needs to know. I don't think the Kulipov is something that everybody needs to harness. I'm gonna just say if you know, you know. If you know, you know. Which I probably don't know. I probably just sound crazy saying that, and you guys don't know what the fuck I just said or what I'm alluding to. I'm just gonna move on. I'm just gonna move on from that. But anyways, he's just saying again, God has all of the materials that he used to will the world with, he's source, he's the one, it's again, it's just these same Platonic thoughts, the good, yada, yada, yada. Trismegistus is the world good. Asclepius, it is good as I shall teach you. For just as of soul and life of the world come forth in matter, those that are good, the change of the climate and beauty and the ripening of the fruits and the things similar to all these, because this God has control over the heights of heaven. He is in every place and he looks out over every place. And in his place there is neither heaven nor star, and he is free from the body. So God has control over the heights of heaven, okay? He's omnipotent. He is in every place and looks out over every place. So if you look out over every place and you study every place and you survey every place and you survey every instance, every encounter, what's that? That's omniscience. I mean, the only way that you can know something is if you encounter it, but if you can encounter everything, then you know everything. So you have omniscience there. And in his place there is neither heaven nor star, and he is free from the body. So if he's free from the body, then he can be in any place at once. So then you have omnipresence. So Trismegistus is saying here that God he's omniscient, he's omnipresent, and he's omnipotent. He's just saying that in like this one little passage. Now the Creator has control in the place that is between the earth and heaven. He is called Zeus, that is life. Plutonius Zeus is Lord over the earth and sea, and he does not possess the nourishment for all mortal living creatures. For it is Kore who bears the fruit. These forces always are powerful in the circle of the earth, but those of others are always from him who is. So you have him who is, and then you have like this Plutonius Zeus. So this is the demiurge, right? Let's just get that clear. So you have this demiurge down here, this logos down here that's maintaining everything, with like the earth and the sea. And when it comes down to life, you have Kore. So you have, this would be like logos in nature, right? So you have something that is forming matter down here, that's forming cosmos down here, that's manipulating cosmos, which would be like this logos, this Zeus. And then you have this Kore, who is nature, right? That's placing life into these different things, that is making these different things evolve and yada yada yada, right? These forces always are powerful in the circle of the earth, but those of others are always from him who is, right? So, that's what's going on the earth. But again, when it comes down to like the spiritual world, it's God. Like a lot of that stuff comes from God. And the lords of the earth will withdraw themselves, and they will establish themselves in the city that is in a corner of Egypt, that will be built toward the setting of the sun. Every man will go into it, whether they come on the sea or on the shore. Oh no. We'll go back to that. Trismegistus, where will these be settled? And I just want to show y'all we're almost done. Trismegistus, where will these be settled now? Asclepius in the great city that is on the Libyan mountain. It frightens as a great evil and ignorance of the matter, for death occurs, which is the dissolution of the labors of the body and the number of the body, when it completes the number of the body. For the number is the union of the body. Now the body dies when it is not able to support the man, and this is death. The dissolution of the body and the destruction of the sensation of the body, and it is not necessary to be afraid of this, nor because of this, but because of what is not known and is disbelieved, is one afraid. So I mean, like dying isn't the end, right? And he's going to go further into this. But what is not known or is disbelieved? Listen to Asclepius. There is a great demon. The great God has appointed him to be overseer or judge over the souls of men, and God has placed him in the middle of the air between earth and heaven. Now when the soul comes forth from the body, it is necessary that it meet this demon. Immediately he will surround this one, and he will examine him in regard to the character that he has developed in his life. And if he finds that he piously performed all of his actions for which he came into the world, this demon will allow him yada yada, turn him yada yada. But if he sees yada yada in this one, then yada yada, he brought his life into evil deeds. He grasps him as he flees upward and throws him down so that he is suspended between earth and heaven and is punished with a great punishment, and he will be deprived of his hope and will be in great pain. Okay. So, reincarnation, right? You die, you encounter this demon, right? In freaking Egypt, it would be like Anubis. And of course, this is a demon. We know that it's a demon because it's situated between two realms. It's situated between earth and heaven, right? It's in the air. And when you encounter this thing, if you lived a good life, you can go on, right? It says that you're will allow him yada yada, turn him yada yada yada. So with the turn him, there's not really a whole lot of words here, right? So we have a line, but then we have only a certain amount of words. So for me, this turn him could be you could be turned to either a direction, of course, right? So this is common sense that I'm saying, but I'm just gonna say it. You can either be turned into a specific direction, maybe you're turned to a specific star, or your essence is turned into something. Your essence is turned into some higher, form of matter or something like that, right? And of course, like when you're impious, then you get placed into great pain. But then one may argue, well, you don't have a body anymore. So if you don't have a body anymore, how can you experience pain? Well, the only way that you can experience pain is by gaining a body. So, what happens when you leave your mother's womb? You're crying, right? Like with a whole lot of psychologists, I have read a book, The Primal Wound. It talks about the fact that like with a lot of times, they relate that crying of the baby with, the baby is essentially experiencing being separated from the womb, being separated from source, and it's like a trauma. It's like a stress or an anxiety. So that could be like that great pain. It's reincarnation. Like that's really all that is being talked about here. And that soul has been put neither on the earth nor in heaven, but it has come into the open sea of the air of the world, a place where there is a great fire and crystal water and furrows of fire and a great upheaval. The bodies are tormented in various ways. Sometimes they are cast down into the fire in order that it may destroy them. Now, I will not say that this is the death of the soul, for it has been delivered from evil, but it is a death sentence. Asclepius, it is necessary to believe these things and to fear them in order that we might not encounter them. For unbelievers are impious and commit sin. Afterwards they will be compelled to believe, and they will not hear by word of mouth only, but will experience the reality itself. For they kept believing that they would not endure these things, nor only yada yada yada. First, Asclepius, all those of the earth die, right? And those who are of the body cease. Of evil with these of this sort. For those who are here are not like those who are there. So if the demons who men they despite there, thus is not the same. But truly, the gods who are here will punish more whosoever has hidden it here every day. Trismegistus, what is the character of the iniquity that is there? Now you think, Asclepius, that when one takes something in a temple, he is impious. For that kind of person is a thief and a bandit. Okay. And this matter concerns gods and men, but do not compare those here with those of the other place. Now I want to speak this discourse to you confidentially. No part of it will be believed, for the souls that are filled with much evil will not come and go into the air, but they will be put in the places of the daemons, which are filled with pain, and which are always filled with blood and slaughter, and their food, which is weeping, mourning, and groaning. Trismegistus, who are these daemons? Asclepius, they are the ones who are called stranglers, and those who roll souls down on the dirt, and those who scourge them, and those who cast them into the water, and those who cast them into the fire, and those who bring about the pains and calamities of men, for such as these are not from a divine soul, nor from a rational soul of man. Rather, they are from a terrible evil. Now, in this text, you have the great fire punishment that awaits souls. But then you also have, again, you have stranglers, right? You have stranglers. And then you have this thing of, you have dirt. You have being cast into water. You have being cast into fire. You have pains and calamities. You have all this different stuff that awaits you. That awaits certain souls down here. So again, like this sounds a lot like the body, right? What does the Bible say that we're formed from? The dirt of the earth. What are we composed primarily of? Water. Those who are cast into the fire. Okay, well, with fire, all fire is in like classical esotericism, fire is just plasma, right? So what are we comprised of when it comes to plasma? Like, our nervous system is like, all it is just materials that are plasma that cause us pain and that give us sensation. So you also have, pains and calamities. Like, I know some people don't believe in astrology, but that's what that would be like. Depending on your actions, you have certain karmas that you have to go through. You might have certain ailments that you have to go through depending on the misdeeds that you performed in a particular lifetime. So, a lot of this does sound like reincarnation. There's certain parts, again, that sound like it's not talking about reincarnation, but when I read between the lines, it talks a lot like reincarnation. But when we're going into the prophecy of Egypt, okay? Look. So, first off, when it talks about, okay, at some point, we're going to be put into a corner of Egypt, right? Here it is, right? And the lords of the earth will withdraw themselves, and they will establish themselves in the city that is in the corner of Egypt, right? It's in the corner of Egypt, but it's built toward the setting of the sun. Now, guys, Egypt is in Africa. Okay? Africa is in the south. Okay? The Egyptians that are in Egypt right now, of course, some of them might be Vandals, right? And I'm not using that in a negative term. I'm being literal, like with the Germanic tribes and all that sorts of crap. Some of them might be Vandals, but, one may argue that a lot of them are Egyptian. But it just says that the people that are going through this prophecy, you're not going to be able to identify them as Egyptians other than by if they still speak their language or not. So they don't have you can't look at an Egyptian and say that's an Egyptian. It's not possible with this prophecy, okay? Also, with the city that's going to be brought about, that these lords of the earth are going to bring about, is going to be in the west. And not only will it be in the west, but it's going to be a place that people go into by sea, by sea and by shore. Okay. sea or shore. Not only is it sea or shore, but again, we're still talking about Egypt. Now, this is future tense, so this place also has to, wherever this place is, it has to still meet the guidelines of the Egypt that has been talked about so far. So it has to be atheistic. If you speak truth, then you have to look crazy. There has to be a great river in it, and along that great river, there has to be like rampant amounts of murder. I'm talking like rampant amounts of crime. What else does there have to be? There has to be climate problems in this place, of course. Can't be no religion. This place also has to have a history where the artifacts in it are taken. Okay, so you have that. You have to have that too. What else does there have to be? Foreigners have to invade it, right? Which can be everywhere, but again, foreigners have to invade it in a way to where the foreigners that invade it can't be spiritual in any way. They have to be atheistic. Okay, that's who the foreigners have to be. Now, if you know, you know. If you know, you know. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna say nothing too deep. You feel me? But if you know, you know. So you have to have that. So y'all make of that what y'all will. Y'all make of what y'all think this Western Egyptian city is. That's located at the setting of the sun. Y'all y'all make of that what y'all will. But this is my interpretation of I'm gonna say the excerpt from the Perfect Discourse. I think that's what a lot of people might well, I'm gonna put both titles. I'm gonna put Excerpt from the Perfect Discourse, and I'm gonna put Asclepius 21 to 29. So that's my interpretation of it. I think there's a lot of parts that, one may argue that I might have went too far into the interpretation. Could be interpreted as something else. Of course, like the Hermetists are not alive anymore, so all we have is what we can interpret from, the primary sources and the sources that they are inspired by. But I think I do believe that I hit the nail on the head a little bit. But anyways, it's your boy signing out. Peace.